Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher here alongside Adam Caplan. I'm in New Jersey still. Adam Caplan is out in Indianapolis at the site of the Combine. We've got good news. Adam's already there. We're recording this podcast on Wednesday. Most people will listen to this by Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon. By that time, I'll be in Indianapolis to join Adam. So both members of the ITB crew will be in Indianapolis for at least the last few days of the Combine, doing our thing, talking to sources, talking to college prospects. And I look forward to getting out there with you, Adam. But we've got some things we got to get through first as far as what's happened so far at the Combine with what Doug and Howie has said. Before we get into that, I just want to let everybody know, because we've been talking about the Inside the Birds website that's going to be coming out very soon. We pushed back the launch just a little bit. We had some technical difficulties with our podcast the other day that were resolved. So we thank everybody for their patience in dealing with that. And then also with the website, we're just cleaning up some loose ends, and we'll probably be unveiling it the following Monday, I think in March 1st. So I look forward to do that. And I know you do too, Adam. And it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yes. Yeah. For someone who used to run a website, I ran the website footballinjuries.com. You really don't want to go live until you have all your ducks in a row. You don't have to rush it. We're not going to rush this thing.
Right.
Yes, it's important. We want this out well before free agency starts. We want to get this out before the Combine started. Well, the Combine started, but when it comes to the Eagles, we're going to get into that in a second. We're going to have plenty of information for you, obviously, because this is the subject of our title is Inside the Birds, but we're also going to have a lot on the other teams of the National Football League, but we'll have plenty on the NFC East as it pertains against the Eagles' opponents. Another thing that I focused on last year, Geoff, our listeners probably could recall, almost every week that we did our show, I had members of the opponent's coaching staff or personnel staff give me what they thought on the Eagles tape.
Right.
And so leading up to that game, so I was able to get some great stuff, and some stuff I was not aware of. Byron Jones covering Zach Ertz. They told me why they did it and how they did it. We'll get into Byron Jones, obviously, because he's a hot topic, certainly. But
right.
One of the things we're going to provide here is really exclusive scouting information that Geoff and I tap our sources. The good thing about Geoff and I is we don't have the same people that we talk to. I'm sure there's some overlap, but Geoff knows a lot of people that I haven't even met before, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and look forward to get out there with Indianapolis and maybe crossing the streams a little bit.
Hey, by the way, it's snowing out here.
What is snow? I don't even know what that looks like anymore.
I know, it's funny. It rained. Right. When I got here on Tuesday, it was pouring. And then I didn't have an umbrella with me. And then Wednesday, I don't know that I call it wet snow because it rained, but it was coming down pretty good. They were predicting 1 to 3 inches. So hopefully when you get out here, you won't be snowed in. But nevertheless, Geoff, here we are. This is my 19th Combine, and I'm enjoying it as usual.
Wow, and I'm be happy because I've probably taken a 3 or 4 year hiatus since leaving Comcast Sportsnet. So I'm going to be thrilled to be back and kind of reconnecting with everybody. Let's talk about the press conference. Howie and Doug, they spoke on Tuesday. They both had some interesting things to say. So I don't know, Adam, if you're kind of dialed into what the reaction to the press conference was back here in the Delaware Valley, but I think people are having difficulty distinguishing whether some of Howie's remarks are reflective of a general manager who is rebuilding and one who is replenishing. And so what I'm saying is, it seems like a lot of people, including, my brother-in-law raced up to me the other day when I saw him. He said, Howie basically said they're not trying to win next year. And I said, what? I have never heard Howie Roseman say we're not trying to win. And I went back and read the transcripts of everything he said in the press conference. And clearly, I think you and I got to point out that this is not a rebuild in the baseball or NBA tanking sense. The Eagles have a good core of talented young players here, and they expect to win. I think Howie was talking more about the process of this year compared to last year and the year before as it pertains to bringing in maybe older guys.
Okay, a couple things. So John Schneider, the Seahawks GM, told me when they did the same thing the Eagles are doing, they're really doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. He called it resetting the roster. They were not rebuilding. They were not going to try to win. They were not going to try to just suck it up and be 5-11 or 6-10. No, he's like, we're competing while we reset the roster. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what Roseman was talking about. I totally understood what he meant. Look, they've got the quarterback. They've got the offensive line. They have some pieces on defense. They clearly need a lot more. They've got a special running back. Tight end, they're really, really good. So this team, on paper right now, to me, is a 10-6 team.
Right.
I strongly believe if they solve the speed issue at wide receiver, which is a major issue, and their speed at defensive end, you could have 15 defensive ends. If you don't have anyone who could consistently rush the passer, which they don't really have. Brandon Graham, you could say he can, but they need to get somebody younger who's fast. Jadard Avery, their hope is he'll compete for some playing time. But Geoff, they need to get faster at corner, so they've got some challenges. But I totally get what Howie was saying.
Yeah, and look, I think if you look at, say, 2017, right, or I'm sorry, 18, they win the Super Bowl, they go into 2018, they're trying to repeat again, and they make a move, and I'll give you one move that is an example of something that Howie did then that he wouldn't do now. Trading a 5th-round pick for Michael Bennett, who was 32 years old at the time. Let's get they were trying to make sure the pass rush was still going to be fierce. They had lost Vinny to Tampa Bay. They're trying to get better in that area, and they made that trade. They're not going to trade a 5th-round pick for a 33-year-old pass rusher this year. They're just not going to do that because they're not in 1 year window. We have to do kind of moves like that. But again, that doesn't mean that they're not going to bring in players to make the roster better. In fact, 2017, when they won the Super Bowl, is kind of an example of how they kind of judiciously went about bringing in Alshon on a market deal, Chris Long on what they thought was a bargain deal, and they got more than they bargained for. They'll still bring some players in to win. I think people need to understand that Howie was not saying that we're taking a new approach so that we can win the Super Bowl in 2 or 3 years from now. It's just that, as you and I have been saying for quite a while, they need to get younger, they need to get faster, they need to get more dynamic, and to do that, you need your draft picks, and you can't just be trading it away for any, Tom, Dick, and Harry who you think is going to help you for 1 year.
I would be very surprised if they have fewer. If they do get the 10 draft picks that Howie's projecting, I would be very surprised if they have fewer than 8 draft picks. Why do I say that? They've got so many holes: wide receiver, cornerback, linebacker. They developmental offensive lineman, which I know internally they think is certainly something that they have to probably do on the interior. With Kelsey's obviously now in his 30s. Brandon Brooks is in his 30s, coming off a significant injury, so they're going to have to address that. So look, they have some challenges, but what I would tell you in the 2017 season, Geoff, they were never thinking Super Bowl. They were thinking they'd be better than 7-9 that they were the previous season.
Right.
They were hoping to compete for a wild card, maybe the division if everything was working out great. But they never thought what they wound up doing, Geoff, is they changed their focus at the trade deadline. I remember talking to them, and they said, you know what? We had an internal talk, and we're going to go for it because we think we're evaluating our roster right. Our coaches are doing a great job. Our roster is better than we thought it was. And they went for it. But, Geoff, you're right. Now they're resetting, looking what they don't have, and they're going to get younger. Now, that doesn't preclude them. Let's move this forward here.
Right.
It doesn't preclude them from signing a 27-year-old cornerback like Byron Jones. It doesn't preclude them from trading for a 29-year-old Darius Slay, who just turned 29, so he will not turn 30 until 2021. 29 years old should be the oldest player that they add on. If they do that, I'm not saying they're going to on Slay, but that to me should be the oldest that they get. And even that, Geoff, if they're holding true to resetting this roster and getting younger, you don't start adding guys in their late 20s, early 30s. That's counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. And to quote Howie Roseman in his press conference, and I have the quote right here, where he was kind of describing the difference in mentality from the last 2 years to this year. He says, and I'm quoting here, quote, "Now we're looking at it over the course of a window. Not that we don't want to win this year. We desperately want to win this year, but more over building this team over 2020, 21, and hopefully 22. And that's the end of the quote. So that shows you they do want to win this year. And I think using Seattle is a great example of a team that recognized that it needed to reset, reshape the roster, but never said, and because of that, we expect to finish 3rd and 4th. And they had Russell Wilson, still had Bobby Wagner, they still had Chris Carson. They had players that they expected to perform well for them. You look at the Eagles, they have a core that I think makes them still competitive, right? They have Carson Wentz, they have Zach Ertz, they have Lane Johnson, they have Fletcher Cox. Okay, there's probably Malcolm Jenkins. I think will be back. He's a good player for them. They've got an ascending second tight end in
Dallas Goedert.
Dallas Goedert, right? Avonte Maddox, good player. Miles Sanders is going to be a nice player for them. So they have a core to win. They just need to now make moves to make sure that not only this year, but the year after and the year after. That's what fans actually want, sustained success. Sure, you love the Super Bowl, but you're not trying to be like the 93 Phillies where you make it, you lose, and then the next 5 years you stink. You're trying to build a successful operation that sustains and stands the test of time, like the Seahawks. The Packers used to do it that way. Certainly the Patriots. There are teams that are well built that make these difficult roster decisions at every few years, but they still have enough to win.
Yeah, they're looking for sustainable success. You're right. They've made the playoffs the last 3 years. Now Howie's made it very clear that they're going to get younger. I expect the draft to accomplish that. And by the way, Byron Jones is only like 16 months younger than Darius Slay, if we're being exact here. So I think when you really look at it, they're going to do something corner free agency, Geoff. Whether it's Slay in a trade, I'm sure they'd rather not give anything up, and they'd rather not trade for anyone. They'd rather draft someone or sign someone in free agency so that they don't have to give up anyone for it.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, right now they had their run. I do appreciate Howie being honest about it.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to keep patchworking this thing, he's saying, "Look, we know what we have." The folks, because Eagle fans are smart, they know that they got older. They had one of the oldest rosters in the league, so now they're going to get younger. And as you and I talked about it about a month ago, we're gonna hold Howie to this. He keeps saying it in every interview. I heard him on Colin Cowherd. I heard the Angelo Cataldi interview in WIP. He's made it clear that they're going to do this the right way and build sustainable success.
Now, the one issue I think we could have with Howie and Doug and the whole organizational stance on getting younger, but still trying to win, but also recognizing the importance of retooling and resetting the roster is what they're going to do with Jason Peters. Because if you listen to Howie and Doug, they're sure leaving the door open for a Jason Peters return. And I think one of them went out of their way to point out that Peters was the fourth highest rated left tackle on PFF last year, which is not a Bible.
I didn't catch that.
I thought so. Either that or I read it somewhere. So, I mean, look, no one's going to say that Jason Peters is a bad player. He's not what he used to be, but he's still better than 80-90% of left tackles out there. But you also traded up and drafted Andre Dillard in the first round last year. And are you really going to let this kid sit for a second year? I mean, most teams like to get their first round picks on the field early so that by year 3, when they're ready for an extension, they can get them locked up to a team-friendly deal. So there's a lot of ramifications to bringing Jason Peters back that just go beyond his play, and it also seems inconsistent. So it's kind of fair to take him to task for this, I think.
Yeah, when I guess maybe our listeners could remember exactly when it was. I'm thinking it was December. I brought up to you before the show, and then I told you on the show that I'm hearing that Jason Peters is actually under consideration to return. As a matter of fact, when I had heard that, I didn't believe it. So I asked, I checked around with people I think we might know, and it sure seemed like that. It wasn't just that he's got a relationship with the owner. It has nothing to do with it. It's strictly because he played well enough.
Right.
But he is 38 years old, which he turned in January. He did miss 3 games due to injury this past season. We know in 17 he missed 9 games. Now he did play 16 and 18 and 16. So he's shown you're right, Geoff. He's shown that he has something left. But the whole point of this, guys, is that as Geoff just said, you drafted a guy in Andre Dillard who's your future left tackle. Typically, if you're drafting a guy in the first round of tackle, he's playing year 1, or he's definitely playing in year 2. The fact that Peters is under consideration, and by the way, Doug Pederson, this is the thing, like, he didn't just say, you know what, I would consider bringing him back. It's Howie's call, but I wouldn't mind having him back. No, he was like, I want him back.
Yeah,
like he made it very clear he wants him back.
He said it's just like Darren Sproles last year, and we brought him back.
Yeah, so, right. Sproles unfortunately didn't work out because he got hurt. But
right. Well, and that's the big fear. That's the big fear with Jason.
Well, let me ask you this.
Uh-huh.
Let me ask you this. If you heard my first reaction. They didn't. No one's told me this, but I'm just going by what I've covered the league for 20 years and the way the teams think. I've bounced my opinions for years on. I'm not always right, but when I try to assess what's said and body language, they're basically saying Dillard's not ready. by Doug coming out like that. Remember, Peter said he's not coming back unless he's starting.
Right.
So let's put this again, folks. This is not a report. This is just an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me, Geoff. How do you read everything that's come out?
So I almost read it in two ways. I feel like if they want Jason Peters back, it's an admission that they still think Jason Peters is a top 5, top 10 left tackle in the league. And if you can get one of those, why would you give it up? And I understand that. But it would also make me think that they're concerned about the development of Andre Dillard. But I would say to that, just on a personal, reflective or, just kind of looking at it level, not a reporter or anything, that I think that fear is somewhat maybe internalized by the presence of Jason Peters. It almost seems like they're not 100% sure that this kid is going to dominate right away. So why would you get rid of Jason Peters? But I think it's unfair to expect Andre Dillard to dominate right away. He struggled at times last year, but I thought more at right tackle than left tackle. We knew he needed to get stronger. We talked about coming from that program and that he was a natural pass protector who would struggle in the run game, has to get physically tougher, has to adapt to the NFL where you got to be, it's not just technique. You got to play that in the trenches with a little bit more strength and toughness. But how do you allow him to do that? How do you allow him to improve? How do you allow him to showcase that if he's constantly stuck, or at least for a second year, stuck behind someone else who happens to be a potential Hall of Famer? So I almost feel like they convinced themselves that it can't be real with Andre Dillard because they know they have Jason Peters in their back pocket. Sometimes that stuff can play with your mind in a way that you don't realize is happening. I don't expect Andre Dillard to come in and play at a Hall of Fame level, but the Seattle Seahawks knew that when they let Richard Sherman go because of his aging and his injuries, that they were going to take a hit at cornerback. That's why they got stronger in other areas. You take the hit and you strengthen other areas and you move on and you hope that the guys you draft improve and develop. And when you draft a kid in the first round that you trade up for, you had that expectation that he was going to improve and develop.
Yeah, it's I never got a straight answer when I checked into the Peter stuff in December, because I just didn't. I thought this doesn't make any sense to me. I get that Peters had played fairly well this past season, but it was more to in my information gathering. There are three things. One of them you just talked about. It's definitely true. Get Dillard, let him have a full offseason of getting stronger. Bringing Peters back for one more year would allow that. With Peters' injury history, Dillard's going to get some starts in. Dillard only started the one game at right tackle. Remember, he got benched at halftime. It was like, what did he say? It was like playing left-handed or something. Writing with your left hand when you're right-handed. Right, and I got what he said, but nevertheless, it didn't
I don't
work.
know if he should have said. He was being honest, but in any case, you don't want to project. You don't want to project a weakness out to the media. You want to say, "I can handle this. I can do it."
Right. So I think of the reasons when we look at why would they consider this. Dillard's functional strength is not there. You did talk about, and you're absolutely right. Let's not forget, this is a guy who almost always was standing up as an offensive lineman. He didn't have his hand down very much because he was in a pure spread. That's a different mindset. The NFL. Do the Eagles want to run a lot of spread concepts? Yes, but the NFL, you need to get way stronger. It's a different mindset in terms of how you're going to play. So things have changed here for Dillard. There's no doubt. I still think they clearly don't think. I would sum it up like this. This is just my opinion, and it's pretty much what Geoff is saying in his own way. They don't think Dillard's ready. And Peter, again, to sum this up and move on here, if you're bringing Peters back, he's already said I'm starting. So that's what's going to happen. Yeah,
we'll see. Again, I just think that they're not giving Dillard enough of a shot that most first-round picks get to enhance and improve and go into it. So we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot.
Well, let me say this though. Okay, let me pick. You make a great point. Okay, let me. You gave me another thought here. So let's say, for argument's sake, that I'm sure they're going to meet with. In fact, I know they're going to talk to Peter's agent this week. So when you do that, you have an idea of where he's at. They could tell him the agent where they're at. So basically, with Dillard, they know where Dillard is physically right now. Let's say, for instance, they surprise us and decide not to bring Peters back. Obviously they've said they want to bring him back. Let's say Peters doesn't want to come back. We're just for argument's sake, and they want to go ahead with Dillard. Here's the problem: if they think Dillard isn't strong enough. Remember, Big V's not coming back. My understanding is he wants to start. They'd love to have him back.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he couldn't find a starting job, they'd take him back. But let's assume he's not coming back.
Right.
You can't depend on Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata missed all last season.
You can't. You would have to, and I think we talked about this a pod or two ago. We named a few of the offensive tackle, veteran offensive tackle market, which won't be great. You got guys like Rashad Hill, guys who have started and played, but they're not great. But, I don't want to use the Patriots as an example. They actually didn't win the Super Bowl and struggled a lot this year. But, they lost the left tackle. They put Marshall Newhouse in there, and I don't think that was the biggest issue with their offense. I think it was more that they had nothing at wide receiver to help Tom Brady. Nobody would stretch the field after Gronkowski. But you can get by. You can play a few games with a veteran holding it down. Certainly the Minnesota Vikings, as bad as they've been and made the playoffs and have gone far the last few years with some veterans plugging in on the offensive line. It's not a model you want to live by. But again, this is all just assuming that Dillard gets hurt and you need somebody to play. So I definitely think the Eagles would try to bring in a veteran anyway, just to have somebody there. Yeah. All right. We're going to move on. I want to mention some names at you, but before I do that, Adam, we've been talking about them all year, and I want to continue to promote the work done by PHL, sportsnation.com, enhancing the fan experience by coverage of the Sixers, the Flyers, the Eagles, the Phillies. It's really a great website. They produce a lot of great content, and I just wanted to let everybody know they should be checking out PHLSportsNation.com. Read their posts. They're really insightful, thought-provoking posts by a lot of different writers. So make sure everybody's checking out PHLSportsNation.com. All right, so the big news on the Combine today being Wednesday, I don't know if this big news is not seismic, but the Giants released Alec Ogletree. He was a linebacker. He was once a first-round pick of the Rams back when they were in St. Louis. Went to the Giants after the Rams. Anytime a guy who's kind of a name or was a first-round pick and is released, you know how Eagles fans are flooding us on Twitter. Should they sign him? Should they sign him? I look at this and I say, Adam, it almost would be inconsistent with what Howie's talking about getting younger. I mean, it's nice to have some veterans, and they don't have too many veterans or any at linebacker, but this guy might still get a decent enough contract that I don't know that Howie's going to want to play.
Yeah, Alec Ogletree turns 29 this season. He's a guy. He's what we call a downhill thumper. He makes a spectacular tackle, and then you get him in coverage. He doesn't make the play. He's played a 43 before they switched to a 34 with the Rams.
Right.
He played a 43, but he's really not what they want. He's more of a 2-down linebacker. He could play 3 downs, but he's really not. He's not great in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Inconsistent player. The Giants moved on from him. They just simply didn't want him. And Kareem Martin was released. He's more of a backup end. He could play in a 43 or 34. He was brought to the Giants because of James Betcher, who had him in Arizona. Betcher, of course, is no longer there. They're the Giants' D coordinator. So Ogletree's just a name. No, he'll want to start. It's not that he's super old. It's just that he doesn't really fit what they need. They want athletic linebackers or playmakers.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see that one at all.
Well, I want to investigate this more when I get down there with you, but I got the feeling and the sense from the Eagles that they really liked what they saw over the year from TJ Edwards as far as being that run-down linebacker, that downhill linebacker. So do I think that the Eagles will still probably sign a linebacker on a 1-year deal, a veteran, maybe like they did with Zach Brown or LJ Fort, but this time maybe somebody they're going to keep because he's not expensive and they're not worried about the comp pick game? Yes, I do. So maybe let's for argument's sake say they sign Alec Ogletree to a 1-year deal. I still think when camp starts, when OTAs begin, that your first team linebacker, rundown linebacker, if you're in a 3 linebacker formation or even in 2, is going to be TJ Edwards alongside probably Nate Gary or maybe somebody they draft higher in this year. But I sense that they were happy with TJ Edwards, and he has to prove that he doesn't deserve the job going into, say, training camp.
I agree. They do like Edwards. He certainly was a good story for them.
I thought he played well.
Undrafted free agent. In the limited time he was asked, he's more of a middle linebacker. Nate Gary could play really 3. If he had to, he could play 3 positions. But they need to add 2 linebackers, whether it's re-signing Kamu Grugier-Hill back this week or adding a veteran. I'm with you. Kevin Pierre-Louis would make sense. Kwiatkowski, the other inside linebacker for the Bears, would make sense.
You think there's any shot that they try to sign Littleton? Corey Littleton? Any shot?
No. He should get my sense is he's going to be in that range, that upper single-digit range of $8 to $10 million a year would make sense to me.
Okay, so that was basically Nigel Bradham money, and I don't know if they're going to be doing that.
Yeah, Nigel Bradham at one point was making $8 million with the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And Blake Martinez is a good player. Joe Sherbert's going to cost a lot. Owasso, the Ravens like to have back. Yeah, I think it's the secondary market, like the two guys from the Bears we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys would make some sense. Then they're just a bunch of journeymen. They tried Corey Nelson. That one didn't work very well. He was gone very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Similar contract.
Yeah, I feel like that's why I feel like sometimes we devote way too much time to talking about this stuff. I mean, think about all the minutes we put into LJ Fort and Zach Brown, only to have these guys not even make it halfway through the year. So
yeah, right.
So there's our 5 minutes of linebacker talk just to satisfy the masses. Let's get into some of the college prospects that are out there in Indianapolis. But before we do that, I want to pause real quick for a word from our great sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Are you interested in money? Yep, I thought so. Well, on the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast, Mesh will follow paper trails, chat with experts, and break down complex ideas to bring clarity to the mystical financial phenomena and help listeners uncover the story behind their money. Each of these compelling stories will hit a broad range of subjects ranging from buying Bitcoin, dealing with student debt, and everything in between. So if you're interested in money, and I know you are, check out the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast on Anchor. All right, Adam, you're out there. You've talked to some of the wide receivers. They've all been measured in. Something interesting about KJ Hamler, the Penn State receiver, who I naturally am required to like because I'm a huge Penn State fan and went there. And I would love to see him not just because he was a Penn State, but he's the speed type receiver that I think the Eagles can use, who can probably play outside and inside. But what did you notice about him in his meet with the media? All right, so he's 5'8.5". 178. He's even smaller than I thought. I thought he'd be. Wow. Jeez. Yeah. I'm going to get more information next week on these. I want to make sure every team that I speak with is aligned with the measurements. Because what happens is the league will announce, everyone gets the media will get access to the measurements because they give them out. But then sometimes they're adjusted the next week. So I just want to make sure that that's correct. 5'8.5", 178. Look, I knew I had been told by a lot of scouts that I talked to during the fall, he was built like Deshaun, but almost the same exact weight. He's actually technically like an inch or so shorter than Deshaun. Ironically, I think Hamler said that's his favorite player. And obviously he and Miles Sanders are very close. Right.
So that's a little concerning that he's that small, but look, he's one of only a few elite speed receivers. Yes, he's not big, but he can flat out fly. He's a pretty good kid. I've talked to some scouts around the country who had that area, the East Coast area. I feel strongly that he's a guy who would fit in terms of speed, but I would differ though in terms of him being able to play on the outside.
Right.
Guys have spoken to some scouts I in the area, and who are the East Coast area from around the country that I deal with, particularly a couple guys on the West Coast. Right. Who deal with the East Coast.
They don't think he can
who know that Penn State program.
Yeah.
Yeah, they question whether he could play on the outside at the next level. That's why if he doesn't go in the first round, that's 100% why he'll go in the second round. Because he wasn't asked a lot. In fact, we interviewed him on Sirius XM Fantasy, and he said, look, he would have liked to have been asked to do it more. He just wasn't.
Right. So, no, he plays inside a lot in the Penn State likes the big, tall, physical receiver on the outside and the speedy guy.
Allen Robinson type.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's interesting because I think that was pretty much the same things you heard from scouts about Deshaun when he came out. Deshaun also went in the second round. He also had some, questions about, people around him. Which reminds me of a great trivia question, Adam. Deshaun going in the second round of that draft. The Eagles had 2 picks in that round, and they used their first second-round pick on somebody else. Do you remember who that person was?
No idea offhand. No.
Trevor Laws, defensive tackle
Trevor
out of Notre
Laws.
Dame.
Yeah.
Imagine Trevor Laws being drafted higher than Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, he had a little success early on, and then he completely faded.
Oh yeah. Now we have to figure out. I'm sorry.
Was he traded? Was he traded to the Rams, or did he sign there? What was it? Or something
I think he was released and signed. I don't think it was a trade.
Okay.
But what we have to do is figure out how the difference is, because you're right about Hamler and the concerns about beating press coverage. But I've also heard Hamler compared to Hollywood Brown, who went in the first round last year.
Wow.
Same kind of speed number, same kind of size, right?
Yeah. Despite Marquise Hollywood Brown from Oklahoma suffering the Liz Frank injury.
Yeah.
I give him credit because they said he dealt with his foot was sore all season. When he got himself together, he was tremendous. And, they're an offense, they don't want to throw the ball very much. Mm-hmm. Look, this kid, and by the way, you could always put on weight at the next level. I don't care if he goes in the first or second round. I just know wherever he goes, he's going to be explosive. So that's pretty much what I have on him so far.
Gotcha.
He's an elite speed guy now. He's a vertical slot, but he's a speed vertical slot, unlike Aguilar, who's really not.
Right. Now, wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends all work out Thursday. So, but depending on when people listen to this, they may not know. By the way, it's 4 to 11. And I was going to mention, you are involved in the quarterback watch for the media, correct?
Yeah. So every year, select media members who are part of the Pro Football Writers Association, we could request to get on a list to watch the quarterbacks throw to the receivers. Mm-hmm. So I will do that, and it's great because I know you could watch it on TV, but there's nothing like being there live. We get to sit at the 50. Of course, I have to put my glasses on because I cannot see from there. I've tried it, and it's impossible.
I've done this as well, by the way.
Yeah. I have my little HD glasses on, and it brings it in close to me, and it's pretty cool. They don't let us tweet anything. It's so ridiculous.
Right. What you basically do is you file a pool report for the rest of the media, correct? You're going to give like a nice little
I think someone else is doing it, but
okay.
I'm going to take my own notes anyway. And then what happens is, all these agents who have quarterbacks want me to tell them what's going on. I'm like, yeah, but you're watching at the same time at some bar. I always laugh at that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but you could see it. You're there. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I mean, it's I don't know how.
Yeah, but it is true and everything.
Right, but seeing them throw live is actually pretty cool.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. So I'll be doing that, and I get to see the receivers run their 40s and also do the drills with the quarterbacks.
Oh, awesome! So that'll be great, and so I'm gonna have to make sure next time we do our pod, when we do it on Sunday, probably Thursday or Friday. Oh, no, let's see. Today is Sunday. That I get your kind of take on.
Yes.
Now, so you're not one of those guys who's assigned a specific quarterback to write about. You're just
no. I did it. I did years ago. I
did that too.
I did it. I wrote all of them up in each session, and I was just
nice.
The problem is when you do that, you're not paying attention to the other stuff. I really want to see these receivers, man. That's a big thing for me.
I agree with you.
I agree. For our show. Yeah. So, and by the way, the great thing is for our Sunday show, I'll have that. You and I, before we get out of here, we'll let the listeners know you and I are going to be together on Thursday and Friday. So we're going to do We're going to do some quick hits on YouTube about what we're hearing on free agency and rumors and stuff. Look, I've only been here for a day, and by the time we get rolling here over the next 48 hours, this is when I can start getting stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, I'm excited to getting out there with you. So that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds. And remember, as Adam just said, make sure you are following our YouTube page, Inside the Birds on YouTube, because we are going to be putting up some videos of some of the college kids that we talked to, and then Adam and I will do some commentary as well. And we're really going to get that page rolling to the next level pretty soon. So Inside the Birds on YouTube. Also want to thank our friends at 97.3 ESPN. Listen to me with Mike Gill and Ryan Rothstein, usually 2 to 6, although now I'll be at the Combine, but I'll be calling in. Maybe we'll get Adam on again. So 97.3ESPN.com and download the free mobile app for 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, you got Shander from 12 to 2. Also, we wanted to say, check out the YouTube page of Hunter Brody. He helps produce our podcast. He is at Sports Talk with Broads. He gives some of the most passionate takes on Philadelphia sports, whether it's the Eagles, the Flyers, the Red Hot Flyers, I should say, Sixers, Phillies just starting up. Make sure you're checking out Hunter Brody's YouTube page, Sports Talk with Broads. I told you about PHLSportsNation.com. Make sure you're checking them out too. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.